What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird.
I'm in Fuego here.
Here to do a Patreon requested review. This one is requested by Fredzilla, and it is for a 70s movie called Alice, Sweet Alice.
Originally entitled Communion.
Ooh, interesting. Oh, okay.
There's a religious aspect to it.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about this movie like we do all of our reviews. We'll talk about our overall thoughts, then the story, the acting, the effects, all of that stuff in turn. Overall, though, I will say that luckily it's still met with my not before 1973 rule.
Just barely.
but I honestly, when I started watching it, I was like a little eye-rolly, but as I continued watching it, I mean, it was no different than a lot of the good, solid 70s horror movies from the time. Like, it felt very Exorcist-y as far as the filmmaking style and the presentation, and obviously not the same subject matter, but a dark subject matter nonetheless, especially with the path they lead you down for the first half of the movie.
Yeah, making you think one thing is going on, or possibly one person being, you know, this culprit, this killer of sorts, and then they pull a little 180 on you, and it's interesting, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So I will say that while I wasn't expecting much, I was pleasantly surprised. Once again, like magic. This one was an older horror movie that definitely has... The way I put it to Fuego after I watched it the first time was, it's got a 70s filmmaking aesthetic, but like 50s female acting in it.
Yeah.
Because the female acting is very like, oh, no!
Especially for being filmed in the late 70s, yet taking place in the early 60s, and I mean... No one's really talking with Jersey accents or anything like that, which is where this takes place. So, not to use a cliched term, actually to use one, I suppose. I felt like this film is a little ahead of its time, personally.
Okay.
No, especially
especially
as a slasher, and it bombed when it initially came out, and I guess even though she has a very small role in it as the sister, Brooke Shields, after she got some fame and notoriety, they re-released this a few years later into theaters, trying to capitalize on her popularity and stuff. That was when it was retitled again. But long story short, I especially thought the acting was very solid in this. And it's an iconic look for this killer, I must say, with the mask and with like the raincoat and everything and stuff. I mean, it looked like the kind of thing that I would see people doing at some of the horror cons that we do and things like that. And fans of the film would instantly recognize it. Yeah. This weird like makeup woman mask plastic face thing going on.
Plastic face. So
exactly.
You can't. Again, I mean, they mess with who's behind the mask a little bit.
Yeah. Iconic killers have distinctive looks, man, and this one definitely had it in spades. So.
But yeah, even through the translucency, you couldn't get an idea of who it was. So
it turns out being someone very different than who you think it is.
yeah, and so it's very interesting that way. So your overall thoughts, were you enjoying it?
Yeah, I liked it a lot, actually. I mean, it's not going to enter the upper echelon of my pantheon or anything, but nonetheless, I thought it was very solid for 70s horror, and the acting was good. I thought the mom was a real babe. I thought, boy, what else? Even like the chemistry with the ex-husband and stuff, and some of the themes that they explored about, you know, just not being given communion because you're born out of wedlock, and some of like there's some deep themes in this film from the religious background that I grew up in and stuff. I thought it was interesting, more so. I mean, it's a Roman Catholic kind of approach in contrast with Baptist for me, but nonetheless, some of those points hit pretty close to home. So yeah, I liked it.
So let's get into the story a little bit. Do you want to do the brief rundown, since it's right off the top of your head?
Yeah. So essentially, you've got these two sisters, and the younger one is about to have her first communion, and so they go in, and you can tell the older sister Alice. I can't remember if the younger sister's name is Karen, but anyway, Alice is the older sister, hence the name Alice, Sweet Alice, and you can tell she's getting to that age where she's conflicted. She's going through a hormonal transition, as we find out at one point in the story. She has her first period and doesn't even tell her mom about it, and so she's very jealous of the attention that the younger sister gets. The younger sister is actually who Brooke Shields played in this, and without spoiling too much, because it happens right at the very beginning of the movie, the younger sister is killed at this first communion under mysterious circumstances. and the sister is fingered for it, and she's taken into some custody. I know that was a terrible term.
When you're talking about churches and young girls, you got to be careful.
Yeah, they basically assumed that she is the perpetrator of this, and she was very jealous of the younger sister, and she's going around doing bitchery little things and stuff, and tormenting the fat landlord, and just all this different stuff. Yeah, that guy was
But the creepy, slovenly, gross.
Oh, and the one scene where he tries to hit on her and stuff,
yeah,
and really gross, man, nasty. But so anyway, the deeper thing in this is that Alice's character was born out of wedlock, and her parents are no longer together. The father has remarried. There's still like a spark of romance between the no longer her actual father and stuff, and so that's the theme that they explore at one particular point. But yeah, they have psychologists trying to like analyze her and all this different stuff, and yet killings continue, and you're not sure if she is like escaping and doing them herself, or if it could potentially be somebody else. And without spoiling too much, they do keep it vague, which is appreciated because of the fact that she has a tormented little bitch face, and she's at that age where she's not very nice.
No, she's a jerk little kid, and it's interesting too because her aunt, her mom's sister, is a very aggressive woman who is very front street about her suspicions and things like that.
Especially after there's an incident where she gets attacked.
Yeah, and it adds to, the suspense of the movie, I think, and the intrigue, as it were.
Yeah, the mom and the sister look very similar. They both got that little froopy little kind of puffed.
The bob,
Yeah, I actually really like it.
but basically, the rest of the movie is them trying to figure out who is the killer and how does it all relate and why were these people targeted and so on and so forth.
Everything else would be spoiling, unfortunately, because there is a mystery aspect to who this killer is. So
now, again, touching on the acting in the same vein of what I mentioned earlier, it is very old-fashioned acting, except I feel like Alice, you could place I feel like showing that kid being so aggressive and rude, I feel like that's part of what was ahead of its time, because that's where the kids are nowadays, overly more so, and even worse on the internet. But like in the
it's fostered this type of behavior.
It's like, oof, I was like, she's abrasive, and for back then it's got to be crazy.
So. Yeah, with all of her like collecting the roaches and like just she's a weird,
taunting the landlord,
weird kid, man. Yeah, exactly. So her
acting was great. Yeah,
her acting was great, and I honestly thought, even the older lady who's the assistant of the reverend or pastor or whatever you want to call him, I thought she was solid in it. Especially she shines quite a bit in a later scene where she's talking about how she lost her daughter on First Communion and how God gives to take away, and she has a really good speech there near the back half of the film where she's talking to the mother, and I thought the mother was good. I thought the father was solid. I thought most of the police did not seem as wooden and just stereotypical silly as you often saw in so many of those 70s TV shows and films and stuff. I actually felt like real characters and real people. So that the acting shined in this for me. I thought it was really just above average, especially for the era.
I agree with you for the most part. Again, I feel like there were some instances.
The landlord was way too over the top.
Well, the landlord was committed, man. He was that guy. Like he was going all the way with it. But I do feel like some of them were a little over the top. The aunt was a little over the top.
The aunt was to a degree. She's not in a ton of it.
The assistant of the high priest guy was a bit over the top at times. But otherwise it was very solid otherwise.
Yeah, agreed.
Now, let's talk about the effects. I mean, there weren't many to speak of, but the ones we got were kind of 70s cheese. There's a stabbing that takes place that looks tremendously fake, but
yet the scene with the guy getting hit in the face with the brick I thought looked really good. Yeah. So I mean, I don't that's the thing, and this was obviously a low budget film. It was made outside of the studio system, as was happening a lot in late 70s, early 80s New York, and this was made in Jersey if I'm not mistaken. And it's not like the director went on to do a ton of other directorial stuff, but he did work as a production designer on a ton of stuff. Most recently he was working on the new MacGyver show, he worked on Castle, various other things over the decades. So I mean, despite the fact that it wasn't like a seasoned pro behind the camera or anything, I thought The cinematography was good, and some of the shot selections were cool, especially when they're in the abandoned building and there's a certain confrontation. I like that scene. Yeah, I mean, for not having a ton of experience, I thought the film looked good, and the gore, when we got it, well, not always amazing. It was solid enough, and, you know, everything in the story and the acting department, for the most part, it drew my attention away from when some of that stuff might have been lacking.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's fair. You know, I just really dug it. The soundtrack was on point. The sound design was
adequately gothic at times,
yeah.
especially the church scenes with the organ and stuff, and I'm just like, oh, I remember that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it just was overall a really solid package that I again, had completely escaped my notice. I mean, I was born after the movie came out, so...
I've heard the name thrown around in people who were, like, really into late 70s, early 80s slashers, but I'm not big into the slasher genre as a whole, so for that reason, it was never one that I sought out, but I'm honestly glad that we did, man. I mean, cheers to Senior Zilla for having us check this one out, man.
Absolutely. So why don't you guys let us know in the comments down below, what do you think about Alice, Sweet Alice? Are you fans, or have you not seen it like we hadn't? I'd be curious to get the cross-section of people and who hasn't versus who hasn't. So let us know in the comments down below. While you're down there, if you are not yet a patron and you're watching this review when it's been released wide on the channel, click the link in the description box down below and you'll be able to request movies just like this one and have us do a review just like this.
Yeah!
If you do so, we greatly appreciate it. You'll be supporting the channel above and beyond, and we greatly do thank you for that.
Hell yes.
Until next time, though, I've been Cecil Laird.
Gracias. I've been Jaime Fuego.
And remember, stay scared!